worse. And I don't know what to do anymore.
Beneath the surface of everyday life, some women carry deadly secrets, turning love, rage, or recklessness into unimaginable atrocity. From Karina Cooper's calculated betrayals to Devyn Michael's cold-blooded actions, these women went from ordinary to vicious, crossing a line that changed lives forever. Let's begin.
I'm gonna get my ass beat tonight. So when I shoot him, after I done called the cops and did everything I was supposed to do.
Just make sure you can articulate
I can.
what's going on.
I can, I'm showing you.
You better really be able to articulate that.
I can, this is my household.
It was supposed to be a normal Sunday morning in DeKalb County, Georgia. But what happened on November 22nd, 2022 would end with a man dead, children traumatized, and a mother behind bars. 30-year-old Quenisha Johnson left her 3 children in the care of their father, 29-year-old DeMonte Smith, while she went out to socialize with friends the previous evening. When she failed to return home, Smith became increasingly concerned. He attempted to contact her by phone, reached out to her family, and even inquired with local hospitals and law enforcement agencies to ensure her well-being. By the next morning, Quenisha finally responded, but instead of returning home to resolve the situation, she contacted the police and requested an escort, claiming that Smith had threatened to hit her. Officers arrived at the house and observed as the couple engaged in a heated argument in the driveway. To keep the peace, police instructed both of them to go inside and cool down. However, before going inside, Quenisha asked a strange question. What would happen if I shot him in self-defense? She claimed she had been researching Georgia's self-defense laws. Minutes later, things escalated. Once inside the house, Quenisha stepped outside to her vehicle, where she retrieved a tire iron and a firearm. She then instructed one of her children to contact emergency services, alleging that Smith had physically assaulted her. Shortly thereafter, she re-entered the residence. According to police records, a single gunshot was heard, followed by Quenisha repeatedly saying the word, "goodbye." DeMonte Smith stumbled outside, wounded and in pain. He told officers, "She hit me in the head with a metal thing, and then shot me. Hurry, before I die." But it was too late. He didn't survive. Quenisha claimed she acted in self-defense, but under questioning, she admitted that Smith never hit her that day. Detectives discovered that Smith had even requested a rideshare ride to leave the house peacefully. He died before it could arrive. In August 2023, a jury found Quenisha Johnson guilty of voluntary manslaughter, aggravated assault, and firearm possession during a felony.
Felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Quenisha Johnson, guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of house arrest and 10 years of probation. However, she showed no remorse for her actions. At the time of this recording, she remains on house arrest, awaiting the result of her appeal. This case serves as a powerful reminder that words can escalate into violence in a matter of seconds. 3 children lost their father, and now their mother will be absent for much of their childhood as well. It's a heartbreaking ending to an already fragile and broken home. Our next case is pure horror, a missing head, toxic fumes, and a courtroom breakdown that left everyone stunned.
Family. But I don't know how to fix any of this anymore.
In 2023, Henderson, Nevada became the center of a chilling crime. 47-year-old Devyn Michael was arrested for the brutal murder of her boyfriend, 46-year-old Jonathan Willett. Initially, she pleaded guilty, but in a shocking turn of events, just before sentencing, Devyn stood before the court and withdrew her plea. The case deeply affected the local community. It was Jonathan Willett's mother who discovered his body. She informed Henderson police that he had last been seen with Devyn the night before. What she found was something no parent should ever have to experience. Jonathan was unresponsive, his head missing, and the room was filled with a strong chemical odor and strange fumes. Henderson police launched an immediate investigation. Inside Devyn Michael's home, they discovered disturbing evidence, including Jonathan's wallet, keys, and social security card. When questioned, Devyn admitted to striking Jonathan on the head with a wooden stick, saying he went limp afterward. When detectives asked if it was possible she had killed him and simply didn't remember, she responded, "It's very possible." Devyn later reached a plea deal, admitting guilt to second-degree murder. In September 2024, she formally entered a guilty plea under an agreement that carried a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. However, everything changed during a tense courtroom hearing in July 2025, when Devyn, crying uncontrollably, told the judge, "I know no one in the family believes me, but I can prove my innocence." Then she turned toward the prosecutor and accused law enforcement of manipulating her into pleading guilty. The courtroom fell silent. District Attorney John Giordani reminded her, "You pled guilty, ma'am." Still, she refused to back down. No clear motive has been confirmed publicly, but the brutality of the crime and Devyn's emotional breakdown in court have sparked ongoing debates. Whether it was a calculated act or the result of something deeper, like mental illness, trauma, or manipulation. However, during her scheduled sentencing hearing on July 17, 2025, Devyn retracted her plea and entered a not guilty plea, insisting on going to trial for first-degree murder. Judge Tiara Jones made it clear that the case would not be delayed. Devyn's attorney requested to withdraw from the case, and the judge assured that new counsel would be assigned promptly. When asked one final time, "Miss Michaels, do you want to go to trial?" Devyn sobbed and replied, "Yes, please." She will now face a jury and stand trial for first-degree murder. For the victim's family, the courtroom scene must have felt like reliving a nightmare all over again. A confessed killer, now trying to take it all back, even as their son's body had been found mutilated and disrespected most unimaginably. And yet, Devyn still insists she's innocent. Our next case is a chilling betrayal, where a secret affair tore apart a seemingly perfect family. On a warm June day in 2021, police in Traer, Iowa responded to a heartbreaking scene. Inside his own home, 42-year-old Ryan Cooper was found shot twice in the face. He was a father of 4. 3 of those children he shared with his wife, Karina Cooper. At first, the tragedy shocked the entire community. Ryan was described as a kind man and a loving dad. He had no known enemies, but as police dug deeper, suspicion slowly began to circle someone close: his wife. For nearly 3 years, investigators worked behind the scenes. In February 2024, authorities made their move. Karina Cooper was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband, Ryan. But she wasn't alone. A man named Huston Danker, Karina's secret lover and one of her salon clients, was also charged as a co-defendant. As the case moved toward trial, prosecutors revealed shocking digital evidence. Just hours before and after the murder, Karina had been messaging Huston on Snapchat. Their conversations weren't about Ryan. They were about their future, talking about getting married, starting a family, and even planning IVF treatments together. The most chilling part, while her husband lay dead, Karina was still fantasizing about life with another man. Prosecutors painted a clear picture. This was a calculated act of killing, a betrayal fueled by love, lust, and lies. Karina wanted a new life with her lover, but instead of asking for a divorce, she chose violence. The secret messages, the hidden relationship, and the careful planning all pointed to one thing. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated, premeditated killing. On July 11, 2025, 4 years after Ryan's death, Karina Cooper was found guilty of first-degree murder. She now faces life in prison. As the verdict was read, she broke down in tears. Her sentencing is scheduled for September. Her lover, Huston Danker, is still awaiting trial and is set to face a jury in August. Ryan's children lost their father forever, and in the most heartbreaking twist, 3 of them also lost their mother. What makes this story even more haunting is how ordinary it all appeared, until the truth began to unravel with just a few taps on a screen. Our next case features a woman who ran over a man, then went gambling.
Your actions, man, are reprehensible. It is inconceivable to this court that you were not aware that you had seriously injured someone.
On a quiet morning in Tampa, Florida, something mournful happened that would change 2 families forever. Allison Huffman, once just a name, would soon be tied to a devastating crash. a courtroom battle, and a shocking act of indifference that stunned the entire community. It was 2016 when tow truck driver Roger Perez Barado was doing his job on the Howard Franklin Bridge. He was helping a stranded driver, just another day at work. But out of nowhere, a car came speeding down the bridge. That car was driven by Allison Huffman. Instead of stopping after the crash, she kept going. Roger was left on the bridge dying, and Huffman, she disappeared into the night. After the crash, authorities searched for the car involved. They found it abandoned at a nearby hotel. Huffman had ditched her vehicle and called a taxi, but she didn't go home. She didn't turn herself in. Instead, she stopped at Walgreens for a snack and then went to the Hard Rock Casino, where she spent hours gambling. By 2018, Huffman finally pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of a crash involving death. In court, she claimed her actions were influenced by bipolar disorder and depression. She told the judge she felt out of her body and frozen in fear, but the facts were hard to ignore. The judge handed down a tough sentence, 28 years in prison. Huffman never expected it to be that long. In a recent hearing, Huffman said she didn't understand what she had done. She blamed her mental health and said her attorneys failed her, accusing them of making false promises and not allowing her to testify. One of her lawyers denied that claim, revealing that Huffman had even rejected a 20-year plea deal. Instead, she rolled the dice and lost. Now Huffman is back in court, asking for a second chance. Judge Michelle Cisco has not made a decision yet, but her ruling will come in the next few months. Whether Huffman will get a reduced sentence or spend the full 28 years behind bars remains to be seen. What hurts the most is not just the crime, it's what came after. A hardworking man died doing his job. A family lost a son, a father, a husband. And the person responsible didn't just flee, she gambled the night away. The victim's sister said, "I hope she realizes the pain she caused not just for my brother, but for us, the ones that lost him, for her own family as well." For many, it's hard to forgive. For others, it's a painful reminder of how fast life can change, and how justice, no matter how delayed, still demands to be served. Our next case is pure evil. A drunk driver's reckless choice shattered an entire family's future.
Did not drive and chose to then get in her vehicle within minutes of arriving home, and within 10 minutes drove and killed 2 people and very seriously injured 3 other children.
On a calm December night in 2020, 27-year-old Henry Saldana Mejia and his wife, 28-year-old Gabriela Andrade, were driving home through Newport Beach, California. Their 3 daughters were in the back seat with them. It was meant to be just another ordinary evening, but at that very moment, 22-year-old Grace Coleman got behind the wheel, intoxicated. Grace had already been arrested for DUI just 4 months earlier, yet here she was again, behind the wheel, with a blood alcohol level more than twice the legal limit. Driving at high speed down Newport Coast Drive, she allegedly ran a red light and crashed her Range Rover into the family's small Nissan Versa. The impact was catastrophic. Henry and Gabriella were killed instantly. Their 3 young daughters survived, but suffered serious injuries. Their cries echoed through the dark road as concerned bystanders rushed to help. Meanwhile, Grace quietly fled the scene. Police later confirmed that Coleman had been given a safe ride home earlier that night, yet she had still chosen to drive again. When officers stopped her, they found she was significantly impaired. She had already been warned and previously faced charges, but she ignored the danger. Sadly, her actions led to the loss of 2 innocent lives. In court, Coleman pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and multiple DUI charges. She also admitted to felony hit and run and previous misdemeanor DUI charges from August 2020, just months before the fatal crash. The courtroom was filled with heartbreak as the story unfolded. There was no evil plan, no intentional harm, but sometimes reckless choices have the same deadly outcome. Grace Coleman chose alcohol over accountability, over safety, over a family's future. The judge sentenced her to 21 years to life in prison. If she had gone to trial, she would have faced over 42 years. Her defense attorneys argued that she had accepted full responsibility, expressed genuine remorse, and even completed a year of community service while in custody. But for the daughters left behind, and for the family members now raising them alone, no sentence could ever undo the pain or replace what was lost. This case isn't just about a crash, it's about what came after. Some tragedies aren't accidents, they're choices. One reckless decision on a single night shattered a family forever. Our next case is fueled by obsession, betrayal, and cold-blooded revenge. Elizabeth Cooper didn't just lose control, she planned to kill.
Last week, she's since racked up 4 more felonies related to an attempted escape, which did not go over well.
On a routine Thursday at the Kenosha County Courthouse, an unexpected and dramatic event unfolded. Elizabeth Cooper, a 30-year-old woman from Twin Lakes, made a last-ditch attempt to escape justice, but her plan quickly fell apart. Cooper was in court facing a reckless homicide charge. Authorities say she provided substances to a friend who later died from an overdose. As she stood before the judge, she may have been hoping for leniency. But instead of being allowed to go home, the judge revoked her bond. A deputy was ordered to take her straight to jail until her trial. That's when panic set in. A deputy placed Cooper in handcuffs and began escorting her out of the courtroom. Everything seemed normal until the unexpected happened. While walking toward the elevator, the deputy got a call on his radio and was briefly distracted. In that moment, Cooper managed to slip one hand out of the cuffs and made a run for it. Surveillance cameras captured the chase as she sprinted down the courthouse staircase, desperate for an exit. As Sheriff David Beth later explained, the reality of going to jail hit her all at once, and she acted on impulse. Some people, especially those with smaller hands, can pull out of their cuffs, which is exactly what she did. She wasn't thinking about the consequences, just the chance to get away. But her escape attempt didn't last long.
Especially with women, if they have very small hands and small features, they can actually pull their hands out of a set of handcuffs.
A security guard near the courthouse entrance saw her running and tackled her before she could make it outside. Meanwhile, the deputy who had been escorting her tried to chase after her, but injured his knee in the process. He's expected to recover. Now, instead of just facing reckless homicide charges, Cooper has been hit with 3 new felonies: bail jumping, escaping criminal arrest, and resisting an officer, for which a preliminary hearing is scheduled for January 19, 2024, and a pretrial conference for her original charge on February 16, 2024. And according to the charges, the judge sentenced her up to 6 years in prison and fines up to $10,000 for bail jumping, felony, the same for escape from custody, and 9 months in jail, and fines up to $10,000 for resisting or obstructing an officer. Sheriff Beth later commented that while courthouse escapes are rare, they do happen. He recalled a similar incident 25 years ago, when someone managed to run away from him inside the courthouse. Cooper's desperate attempt at freedom may have been impulsive, but it only made things worse. Instead of escaping, she sealed her fate, and now faces even more serious legal consequences. Our next case is about a woman's bold escape attempt and getting away with it. They were dead wrong.
Go ahead and lock her up. Go ahead and take her into custody.
On a seemingly ordinary day in Jefferson District Court, Louisville, Kentucky, Judge Sean Delahanty was handling routine cases. But what happened next turned the courtroom into a scene of chaos and defiance. 18-year-old Keisha Johnson was scheduled to appear in court for charges related to controlled substances and evidence tampering. However, when the judge called her name, she refused to step forward. "Judge Delahanty, come on up here, ma'am." "Keisha, I wanted to stand here." Judge Delahanty, "No, you've got to stand at this podium." "Keisha, awesome. Can you tell me?" Instead of answering to the charges, she challenged the court's authority. Keisha asked a question to the judge. "What laws do you guys operate under?" The judge answered her, "The laws of the state of Kentucky." Despite multiple warnings, Keisha refused to cooperate. The judge remained patient at first, but frustration quickly built up. Judge Delahanty, "I do not want to lock you up, but I may very well have to." As the judge tried to regain order, another disturbance erupted in the back of the courtroom. 36-year-old Jenna Vondran, an observer, was illegally recording the hearing on her phone. When authorities told her to stop, she refused and became aggressive. "Jenna, show me the law. Show me the law. This is my property." The judge ordered her arrest, but Jenna resisted, screamed, and tried to pull away. She had to be pushed against the wall as officers struggled to restrain her. The chaos escalated so quickly that Judge Delahanty hit his panic button 3 times, only to realize it wasn't even working. Both Keisha and Jenna appeared to believe they could challenge the legal system by questioning its authority. Keisha refused to acknowledge the charges, claiming the court had no jurisdiction over her. Jenna insisted on recording the proceedings, despite clear rules against it. Neither seemed to understand that arguing with the judge wouldn't change the law. Even after watching Jenna's arrest, Keisha continued to challenge the court's authority and said, "Prove your jurisdiction. A court cannot proceed until you prove jurisdiction." At this point, Judge Delahanty had enough and said, "All right, I'm going to prove jurisdiction to you right now. Deputies, take her into custody." As officers moved in, Keisha fought back. The podium fell over and she was tackled to the ground before being dragged out of the courtroom. Even as she was arrested, she continued shouting about common law and the U.S. Constitution. This courtroom meltdown was a dramatic display of defiance against the legal system. Jenna Vondran was charged with resisting arrest, contempt of court, and disorderly conduct. Both Keisha and Jenna ended up in handcuffs, and the courtroom disturbance highlighted the legal consequences of defying authority in a courtroom setting. While Keisha was sentenced for 12 months. In the end, both Keisha Johnson and Jenna Vondran's actions not only failed to change the legal proceedings, but also resulted in more charges, reinforcing that challenging a judge's authority in court does not lead to favorable outcomes. Our next case is even more challenging. Defying a judge in court won't get you out of trouble. It will only make things worse.
Now, hold on a second. I'm not done talking. I got kids and let me go.
On March 25, 2011, a courtroom in Las Vegas turned chaotic when a woman named Latasha Williams lost control. She had just appeared before a judge on serious charges, kidnapping and child endangerment. When the judge denied her bail, her reaction stunned everyone in the courtroom. According to officers, Latasha Williams made a threatening remark toward a child in an apartment building, raising concerns about the child's safety. It appeared that she was facing personal challenges, including emotional and financial struggles. However, authorities took the situation very seriously, as the child's well-being was their top priority. Thankfully, the child was found safe and unharmed, though understandably shaken by the experience. Williams, clearly desperate, shouted, "Let me go. I've got kids and responsibilities." But the judge's decision was final. She would remain in custody until her trial. That's when things took a violent turn. As officers approached her to take her back into custody, Williams resisted. She kicked, screamed, and fought back. Courtroom security quickly stepped in, but it wasn't easy to restrain her. The courtroom, usually a place of order, became chaotic. Williams continued to fight, yelling, "I've had 3 evaluations. That should be enough to satisfy the court's argument." She was referring to psychological evaluations she had undergone, hoping they would convince the court to release her. But her anger only escalated. "I'm tired of these trifling judges," she screamed as officers pinned her to the ground. The struggle wasn't just loud, it turned dangerous. One of the officers ended up with a minor knee injury and a cut on his face. Williams' reaction stemmed from fear and frustration. Facing serious charges, she likely knew her chances of freedom were slipping away. She tried to argue her case in the most dramatic way possible, but instead of convincing the judge, she made things worse for herself. The courtroom finally regained order as Williams was subdued and taken into custody. Her outburst didn't change the judge's decision. Instead, it highlighted the seriousness of her situation. The more she resisted, the more trouble she found herself in. For those in the courtroom, the scene was shocking. Court officers deal with difficult situations daily, but violent outbursts like this are rare. Even one of the officers sustained minor injuries. Williams' desperate plea and physical resistance showed the intense emotions at play. However, no matter how desperate she was, her reaction only reinforced the judge's decision. She wasn't going anywhere. This case serves as a reminder that courtroom behavior matters. Williams' actions didn't help her case, they only added to her problems. Our next video reveals what happens when, instead of fighting in the courtroom, they make a run for it.
And 180 days in jail, I'll credit 1 day served. However, I will start that.
A woman stands in court, sentenced to 180 days for shoplifting. She seems calm, even asks to step outside to call her family. But within moments, she's running for her freedom, leading officers on a chase that no one saw coming. It was the morning of August 2015 when Stephanie Rybkowski appeared before a municipal judge in Berea, Ohio, and was sentenced to 180 days behind bars for theft from a Walmart store. However, before being taken into custody, she politely asked the judge if she could step outside to make a phone call. With a bailiff watching closely, she walked out of the courtroom, phone in hand. At first, everything seemed normal, but then, out of nowhere, she sprinted down the stairs and out the front door of the courthouse. The bailiff ran after her, but Stephanie had already reached her car, a 2001 Chevrolet Blazer. As she backed out of her parking space, the bailiff tried to stop her, but she kept going. In the process, She hit the officer's leg, knocking him to the ground. Luckily, he wasn't seriously hurt, but by the time he got back up, Stephanie was already gone. With her escape now a top priority, U.S. Marshals joined the hunt. Officers searched across Ohio, determined to find her before she could disappear completely. 5 days later, their search came to an end. Stephanie was found in Canton, Ohio, and arrested by U.S. Marshals. She was no longer just a shoplifter. Now she faced new charges, including assault, escape, and resisting arrest. Marshal Pete Elliott made it clear, when someone shows no regard for law enforcement or public safety, we must take action to remove them from the streets. What was she thinking? Stephanie's escape was bold, reckless, and ultimately doomed to fail. While she may have thought she could outsmart the system, the law caught up with her in the end. As she stood before the judge once again, this time in handcuffs, there was no escape. The courtroom was silent when the judge said these words, "Your actions show a complete disregard for the law. You ran, and now you face the consequences." Now, instead of just 180 days, she's looking at much more time behind bars. All because of one impulsive decision to run. Our next case is more haunting. This time, a reckless decision cost an innocent man his life.
So your actions that night took my partner, my world, my everything!
In 2019, Alondra Marquez, 22, caused a fatal DUI crash in San Diego, killing Jiao Pham and injuring Andy Lin. She was sentenced to over 13 years in prison. During sentencing, Marquez interrupted victim statements, leading to a heated exchange. It was supposed to be a fun getaway. Jiao Pham and his friend Andy Lin had traveled from San Francisco to San Diego for a wedding. The two spent their evening at a bar in Hillcrest before calling a Lyft to take them back safely. But that same night, 22-year-old Alondra Marquez made a dangerous choice. Despite multiple offers for a ride, she decided to drive herself. That decision led to a tragic accident, costing an innocent man his life. Marquez was well over the legal limit, yet she still chose to drive. She sped down Highway 163 in Balboa Park at a staggering 109 miles per hour, putting herself and others in danger. Within seconds, disaster struck. Marquez's car slammed into the back of the Lyft carrying Pham and Lin. The force of the crash sent the vehicle flying into a ravine. The Lyft driver managed to escape with minor injuries, but Pham was not as lucky. He lost his life on impact. Lin survived, but suffered a traumatic brain injury that would change his life forever. Officers arrived to find the Lyft vehicle wrecked in a ravine. The shaken driver provided a first-hand account, while detectives gathered evidence, including skid marks and surveillance footage showing Marquez speeding without braking. Marquez was found near her damaged car, appearing disoriented, struggling to speak clearly, and showing signs of impairment. She was unable to pass a field sobriety test. With previous offenses and a suspended license, she faced serious charges, including reckless driving resulting in a tragic loss and causing severe injuries. As the case moved forward, prosecutors sought the harshest penalties possible. However, the defendant's defense tried to convince that it was an accident, but still, it can give peace to the victim's family.
Has shown remorse, but then she almost takes it back. I'm sorry for the victim's family, but it was an accident.
At Marquez's sentencing, the courtroom was filled with grief and rage. 13 people flew in from San Francisco to speak on behalf of Pham and Lin. The most heartbreaking words came from John Lawhead, Pham's life partner of 11 years.
We were together for almost 11 years until your actions that night took my partner, my world, my everything! But you still don't have any remorse in your heart. You are very shallow, aren't you?
But instead of showing remorse, Marquez interrupted and mumbled, "I don't care." What made this tragedy even worse was that it was completely preventable. Marquez had 5 chances to make the right choice. 5 different people had offered to give her a ride that night, but she ignored them all. She wanted to drive, at any cost. Instead of choosing safety, she chose recklessness, and in doing so, she stole a life. Despite the heartbreaking testimonies, Marquez remained emotionless. She read from a prepared statement, showing no real regret for what she had done.
I remember, I realized that I really messed up. Clearly, I took someone's life, unfortunately. I just want you guys to know that I didn't do it on purpose.
Lawhead held up a picture of Pham's gravesite. "This is what I see when I go visit him now. Do you understand your actions now?" But Marquez had nothing meaningful to say. She simply asked for forgiveness. She said, "I'm sorry. I know you guys are hurting." And finally, Marquez was condemned for 13 years and 4 months with the possibility of parole after 9 years. Her words only added to the anger in the room. Lawhead, filled with grief, told her something he never thought he would say to another human being.
But you still don't have any remorse in your heart. You are very shallow, aren't you? You're a very shallow person, aren't you?
Marquez pleaded guilty and faced a maximum sentence of 13 years and 4 months in prison. But for Fam's loved ones, no sentence would ever bring him back. The man they loved was gone forever. Up next is Elisa Baker, whose deception and cruelty led to a heartbreaking case that shocked those who uncovered the truth.
Of the 1,200 inmates here, Elisa Baker is the most hated. So much so, for her own protection, she spends her days in isolation.
This little girl, a survivor, who survives cancer, not once but twice, including bone and lung cancer. We know now that she is not only dead, but dismembered.
October 9th, 2010, Hickory, North Carolina. A frantic 911 call came in. 10-year-old Zara Baker was missing. Her stepmother, Elisa Baker, told police that Zara had been kidnapped. But as investigators arrived at the home, something felt off. Zara wasn't just any child. She had lost her left leg to bone cancer and wore hearing aids in both ears. Despite her struggles, she was known for her bright spirit and big smile. But now her room was empty, her prosthetic leg left behind. As the investigation unfolded, the truth became more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Elisa Baker played the role of a devastated stepmother, pleading for Zara's return. But her story kept changing. Then, a major breakthrough. Police found a ransom note. It claimed Zara had been taken, but something was off. The writing was messy, rushed, and after forensic testing, it matched Elisa Baker's handwriting. The so-called kidnapping was a cover-up. Investigators turned their focus to Elisa and her husband, Adam Baker. But when they pressed Adam, he claimed he had no idea what happened to Zara. He believed Elisa had handled everything while he worked long hours. Days turned into weeks. Elisa eventually cracked, but what she revealed left detectives horrified. Search teams scoured multiple sites across North Carolina. Piece by piece, Zara's remains were recovered. Her prosthetic leg was found in a creek. Days later, her skull was discovered in the woods. The rest of her body never fully recovered.
It's the sad discovery US police always suspected they would make, confirming Australian-born Zara Baker is no longer missing.
We have recovered enough physical evidence to believe we have found Zara.
When Elisa was arrested, she showed no real emotion, no tears, no remorse, just a cold, detached demeanor. She blamed Adam for everything, but the evidence pointed at her as the mastermind. Elisa Baker had a long history of cruelty and manipulation. She had a trail of ex-husbands, financial fraud, and physical harm allegations. But with Zara, her cruelty escalated. Elisa resented taking care of a sick child, especially one that wasn't hers. Zara endured years of verbal and physical harm at Elisa's hands. In a shocking confession, Elisa admitted that Zara died accidentally in their home. But instead of calling for help, Elisa and Adam dismembered her body and scattered the remains across different locations to cover up the crime. Zara's final moments remain unclear, but one thing was certain: this was no accident. Elisa Baker struck a plea deal, avoiding a first-degree murder charge. Instead, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and bigamy. Yes, she even lied about being legally married to Adam. Her sentence? 10 years. 10 years for a crime so heinous it shocked an entire nation. Zara's life was cut short, and her killer would walk free before she would even have graduated high school.
There are no words to explain the hate I have for you.
Zara Baker's biological mother, Emily Dietrich, called it an act of pure evil.
Zara was pulled apart like some human puzzle and discarded like rubbish for wildlife to graze.
The courtroom was filled with anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. Zara's biological mother, who lived in Australia, was inconsolable. The judge called Elisa's actions pure evil, but Elisa, she sat emotionless. No breakdown, no apology, just the same empty stare. The public was outraged. People demanded harsher punishment, saying Zara never got justice. Even after her release, Elisa remains one of the most despised criminals in North Carolina's history. Our next case is just as chilling. Rebecca Frick, a mother whose uncontrollable rage led to an unthinkable act.
24-year-old Rebecca Frick, emotional, being taken back into custody. The Erie resident is accused of trying to kill 38-year-old Michelle Muir by hitting her with her car.
A summer night in Erie, Pennsylvania, turned into a scene of chaos when Rebecca Frick, a 24-year-old woman, let her rage take control. What started as a petty argument quickly escalated into something far more dangerous, an act of pure, reckless violence that left one woman dead in the middle of the street. It all began with an argument over a dog. Rebecca Frick and Michelle Muir, 38, got into a heated fight outside a home on Parade Street in August 2017. Witnesses later said the dispute spiraled out of control, with shouting echoing through the quiet neighborhood. But no one expected what came next. In a fit of rage, Frick stormed into her car, slammed the door, and turned the ignition. Michelle was standing in the street when Frick hit the gas, accelerating straight towards her. There was no hesitation. She plowed into Michelle with full force, sending her body flying across the pavement. Instead of stopping, Frick sped away, leaving the scene and Michelle bleeding out on the ground. By the time emergency responders arrived, it was too late. Michelle was pronounced dead at the hospital. The community was in shock. This wasn't a tragic accident. This was a murder. Frick didn't turn herself in. Instead, she tried to cover her tracks, acting as if nothing had happened. But witnesses identified her car, and police tracked her down within hours. When confronted, Frick showed visible remorse as she was taken into court, but that didn't take away the reckless crime she committed that night. She was charged with third-degree murder, homicide by vehicle, and leaving the scene of an accident. But as the trial began, her defense team argued that it wasn't intentional, claiming that Frick panicked and made a terrible mistake. The jury wasn't buying it. The evidence was undeniable. Frick had full control of her car. She had every opportunity to stop, but she didn't. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was silent. Frick was sentenced up to 40 years in prison for third-degree murder. She wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 16 years. Her reckless decision had stolen a life, and now she would spend decades behind bars paying the price. Prosecutors argued that Frick's motive was fueled by uncontrollable rage and impulse. The fight had pushed her to the edge, and in a moment of fury, she chose to end Michelle's life rather than walk away. But the question remained, was this a crime of passion, or was Frick simply a dangerous person who had no regard for human life?
This sentence allows the family to receive a sense of justice as well as the finality that they've been longing for. And so we're satisfied with this outcome.
Michelle's family broke down in tears as the sentence was announced. For them, justice had been served, but it wouldn't bring Michelle back. Her friends described her as kind, caring, and full of life, a woman who had so much more to give. Now, all they had were memories. As for Frick, although there were visible tears, no apology was given to the victim's family. Just the harsh reality that her one moment of rage had destroyed two lives, Michelle's and her own. Rebecca Frick's impulsive rage led to a devastating tragedy, but the next case is even more disturbing. Cheyenne Harris, a mother who let her own child suffer in the most unimaginable way.
Chickasaw County 911.
It's a scene straight from a nightmare.
What I took away was the pain and the trauma of the first responder. That person's life is never going to be the same again.
On August 30th, 2017, Cheyenne Harris and Zachary Cohen made a 911 call that sent shockwaves through Alta Vista, Iowa. When paramedics arrived at their small apartment, they were met with a scene so horrifying that even seasoned professionals were left shaken. In the corner of a dark, sweltering room, a 4-month-old baby, Sterling Cohen, sat in a mechanical swing, motionless, lifeless, and surrounded by a sickening stench. What should have been a routine medical response quickly turned into a crime scene investigation.
Okay, what's going on?
Around 9, my girlfriend went to feed our son, and then about 11 or 11:30, she went to check on him, and he was gone.
Gone meaning?
He died.
The details that emerged were beyond disturbing. Baby Sterling Cohen had been left in that swing for an extended period, completely neglected. His fragile body showed signs of severe rash and infection, and the conditions he endured led to a tragic and preventable loss of life. The lack of care had devastating effects, making it clear that he had been left alone in his final days. The autopsy revealed that Sterling had been left in the same room for a couple of weeks, while his parents went about their lives, completely ignoring him. But the most chilling part, Cheyenne Harris and Zachary Cohen lived in the same apartment. They had food, water, and electricity, yet they let their babies suffer and die in agony while they did nothing. What could drive a mother to such unimaginable cruelty? Prosecutors pointed to injected addiction. Harris and Cohen had a history of substance use, and authorities believed that Sterling's death was not due to ignorance, but complete neglect, fueled by addiction. Harris's defense team tried to claim that she was suffering from postpartum depression, but experts dismissed this, arguing that her deliberate neglect showed something far darker. When investigators interviewed Harris, her responses were cold and detached. She didn't break down in tears or plead for forgiveness. Instead, she downplayed her role, claiming she didn't realize how bad things had gotten. But the evidence painted a different picture. The apartment was clean, with functioning utilities and stocked food supplies. The only thing that had been left behind was her child. Prosecutors wasted no time in charging both parents with first-degree murder and child endangerment. But Cheyenne Harris's trial became the focus, as people struggled to understand how a mother could let her own infant son suffer such a horrific fate. The trial was swift and brutal. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict Cheyenne Harris of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
Her co-defendant, Zachary Cohen, was also found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. In the end, the judge did not hold back, stating that Sterling's death was one of the most disturbing cases the courtroom had ever seen. Harris, once a young mother with her whole life ahead of her, would now spend the rest of her days behind bars, haunted by what she had done. In court, Harris finally showed emotion, but only when confronted with graphic photos of her son's body. She sobbed, rocking back and forth as if reality had finally hit. But to the jury and the public, her tears were too little, too late. Sterling's grandparents, who had no idea how bad things had gotten, were devastated. The community was outraged, with people questioning how no one had stepped in sooner. But the truth was clear. Cheyenne Harris had every opportunity to save her son, and she chose not to. Her self-destruction was complete. Once a mother, now a monster. A mother's neglect led to an unthinkable tragedy, but in the next case, the crime wasn't just about indifference. Taylor Parker wanted a baby of her own, and she was willing to kill to get one.
Family members had to leave the courtroom before crime scene investigators and the medical examiner detailed evidence of a bloody, violent, and extended attack on the morning of the murders.
On October 9, 2020, a Texas state trooper pulled over a woman speeding down a highway near the Texas-Oklahoma border. In the passenger seat, wrapped in a blanket, was what Taylor Parker claimed was her newborn baby. She told the trooper she had just given birth, but something was off. Minutes later, back in New Boston, Texas, a chilling 911 call came through. A woman had been murdered in her own home, and her unborn baby was missing. The horror that unfolded would expose one of the most twisted crimes in Texas history. Taylor Parker had built a life on lies. For months, she had convinced friends, family, and even her boyfriend that she was pregnant. She staged fake ultrasounds, faked doctor's visits, and even hosted a gender reveal party. But the truth, she was never pregnant. Desperate to keep up the act, Parker needed a baby, and she was willing to kill for one. Her target was 21-year-old Reagan Simmons Hancock, a mother of 1 and 8 months pregnant. The two had known each other through mutual connections, and Parker saw an opportunity. On the morning of October 9th, Parker arrived at Reagan's home under the pretense of a friendly visit. But what happened next was pure brutality. Parker's motive was as twisted as the crime itself. She wanted to convince her boyfriend she was pregnant so he wouldn't leave her. She believed that stealing a baby and passing it off as her own would solidify her fantasy life. But her obsession spiraled into cold-blooded murder. Her entire pregnancy was a lie, and as the months ticked down, she knew she needed a baby to complete her illusion. Reagan Simmons Hancock was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Inside Reagan's home, Parker launched a brutal attack. She struck Reagan in the head at least 5 times with a hammer, then stabbed her over 100 times in a frenzied assault. Reagan fought for her life, but Parker overpowered her, eventually cutting the baby from her womb with a scalpel. Reagan's 3-year-old daughter was asleep in the next room. Parker fled the scene, taking the newborn with her, leaving Reagan to die alone in a pool of blood. By the time first responders arrived, it was too late. Reagan was dead, and the baby, who had never taken a breath outside the womb, was gone. When Parker was pulled over later that morning, she still clung to the stolen baby, desperately trying to maintain her lie. But the trooper saw through it. Within hours, Parker was arrested for murder. Parker's arrest unraveled her elaborate scheme, exposing the twisted lengths she went to in order to fake her pregnancy. Prosecutors called it one of the most brutal, calculated crimes they had ever seen. During the trial, jurors sat in shock as forensic experts detailed the violent attack. The evidence was overwhelming. Parker had planned every step leading up to the murder. It took the jury less than 2 hours to convict her of capital murder and kidnapping. The judge handed down a death sentence, ensuring Parker would never walk free again. In court, Parker showed little emotion, even as Reagan's family sobbed while detailing their unimaginable loss.
A heavy burden feels lifted. I feel like now we can start trying to heal. And we don't have this over our heads. We know where she's going to be, we know where she's at, and she's taken care of.
Reagan's mother stared Parker down, telling her that she had ripped apart their family in the most violent way possible. Reagan's husband and daughter were left to live with the nightmare of what had been stolen from them. For many, the sentence felt like justice, but nothing could undo the horror of what Parker had done. From a web of lies to a chilling crime, Taylor Parker's story is a haunting reminder of just how far some will go to maintain an illusion. A woman so obsessed with a fake pregnancy that she was willing to kill for it. But in the next case, the crime spanned decades. Virginia McCullough's shocking secret went undiscovered for years until authorities unearthed a truth that left a community in disbelief.
I did know that this would kind of come eventually. It's proper that I serve my punishment. Cheer up, at least you caught the bad guy.
For 4 years, no one suspected a thing. Friends and neighbors believed Virginia McCullough's parents, John and Janice McCullough, had simply moved away. But behind the doors of their Essex home, a dark secret festered. Their bodies lay hidden in a makeshift tomb, while Virginia continued her daily life as if nothing had happened. The truth behind their gruesome fate would only come to light after a shocking confession, one that left police struggling to comprehend the depths of her deception. In August 2019, Virginia murdered both her parents, though exactly how she did it remains unclear. What is known is that John and Janice never left their home alive. Instead of reporting their deaths, Virginia wrapped their bodies in plastic and blankets, hiding them inside their home for years. She lied to family, friends, and neighbors, telling them her parents had moved abroad. She continued to collect their pensions, living in their house as if nothing had changed. But as time passed, suspicions grew. Relatives hadn't heard from John or Janice in years, and when the police were finally called for a welfare check in September 2023, Virginia's secret unraveled. She greeted the officers at the door with a chilling statement: "You've caught the bad guy." Inside, police found the decomposed remains of her parents, wrapped and hidden inside the home. Virginia McCullough's motive was a twisted mix of control, financial gain, and resentment. She had become dependent on her parents' money, relying on their pensions and savings to fund her life of deception. But there was more than greed driving her actions. Investigators discovered that Virginia had a history of conflict with her parents. Reports suggested that she resented their authority and felt trapped under their control. To her, their deaths weren't just about money, they were about freedom. By eliminating them, she was able to live her life on her own terms, without restrictions, without accountability, and without anyone questioning her. With her secret exposed, Virginia was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. In court, the disturbing details of her crime were laid bare. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman who had coldly planned the cover-up, deceiving everyone around her while living among the bodies of her victims. Her defense argued that mental health struggles played a role, but the jury wasn't convinced. Virginia McCullough was found guilty of both murders and sentenced to life in prison. For years, she had pretended her parents were still alive, but in the end, justice caught up with her. In the courtroom, the weight of the truth finally crashed down. Relatives of John and Janice were left stunned by the sheer horror of the crime. The idea that Virginia had lived for years with their bodies, lying to everyone she knew, was almost too much to process. To many, she wasn't just a murderer. She was a master manipulator, capable of keeping up a chilling charade for nearly half a decade. For her parents, there were no goodbyes, no final words, only a betrayal by the daughter they had raised. The next case shows what happens when desire turns deadly. Monica Cementilli helped orchestrate her husband's murder while pretending to mourn.
She just kept saying that he's gone, that I'm not a wife anymore. Just the weeping, the not being able to breathe. She was beyond devastated, beyond devastated.
In 2017, a calm afternoon in Woodland Hills turned into a nightmare. Fabio Cementilli, a well-known celebrity hairstylist and a loving father, was found stabbed to death in his backyard. The news stunned the beauty industry and everyone who knew him. He was kind, talented, and deeply loved by his family. But behind the peaceful image of his home, something heartbreaking was unfolding. At first, it looked like a home invasion gone wrong. Police believed it was a random act of conflict. However, the truth was far more personal and painful. As detectives searched for answers, they began to uncover secrets that would leave everyone speechless. Investigators eventually turned their focus to someone else, Fabio's wife, Monica. They learned she was having an affair with Robert Baker, a man with a dark past. Slowly, the pieces came together. Monica and Baker had been using encrypted apps to keep their conversations hidden. Evidence showed Monica may have left doors unlocked to let the killers in. A man involved in the killing, Chris Austin, admitted to helping Baker in the attack. He later testified that Monica was part of the plan all along. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a crime, it was a betrayal. The courtroom was filled with quiet tears. Fabio's sisters, Morella and Lori, called it a day of healing. Justice was served today, Morella said. Our spirits are lifted. My brother can finally rest. We are overjoyed she will spend the rest of her life in jail, Lori added. Prosecutors said Monica wanted to inherit Fabio's estate and hoped to build a new life with Baker. Instead, she destroyed everything: her family, her future, and the life of a man who trusted her. Baker pleaded no contest and was sentenced to life in prison. Monica went to trial. She cried as the verdict was read.
The indictment. We further find the murder to be of the first degree and carried out by the defendant, Monica Cementelli, for financial gain within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2A1 to be true. We further find the allegation that the defendant, Monica Cementelli,
guilty on all counts, including conspiracy and killing for financial gain. She now faces life in prison with no chance of parole. It was a painful journey for everyone. A beloved father lost, a family forever changed, and a wife who should have protected, but instead chose to destroy. Our next case involves a woman who conspired with her friend to murder her husband, then carried on as if nothing ever happened.
What the verdict says, I am innocent of these crimes. I never asked anyone to harm or murder my husband.
On a quiet February night in 2019, a hero returned home after a long shift. Evansville firefighter Robert Dewar had served his community for nearly 3 decades. But just as he pulled into his driveway, he was ambushed, shot multiple times, and left to die. What began as the tragic loss of a local hero soon unraveled into something darker. His wife, Elizabeth Fox Dewar, was behind it. Elizabeth had been married to Robert for years. To the outside world, they seemed like a normal couple. But behind closed doors, she was hiding a deadly secret. She had started a relationship with a man named Larry Richmond Sr., a convicted killer recently released from prison. And together, they plotted the unthinkable: Robert's death. After Robert was gunned down, the Evansville Police Department launched an intensive investigation. Though the weapon, a powerful Taurus Judge revolver, was never recovered, detectives pieced together a trail of digital footprints, witness statements, and motive. Suspicion quickly turned to Elizabeth and her new lover, Richmond. It became clear that Elizabeth didn't just have a broken marriage, she had a plan. The trial was intense. Prosecutors revealed that Elizabeth didn't just know about the killing, she helped plan it. She wanted Robert out of the picture and used Richmond to make it happen. Robert, who wore his badge with pride, had no idea the woman he trusted most was setting him up to be killed. Some say her motive for killing was money. Others say she wanted to start a new life with her lover. But no matter the reason, the cost was the same: one good man dead and a community devastated. In May 2024, after years of pain and waiting, justice was served. As the verdict was read and Elizabeth was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit killing, she started sobbing and said, "I'm in shock, devastated and lost." A judge sentenced her to 90 years in prison, 60 years for murder and 30 years for conspiracy. Since the charges were treated as separate acts, she will serve the sentences one after the other. The courtroom was packed when the sentence was read. Some whispered yes in relief. Robert's fellow firefighters, friends, and family had waited 5 years for this day. His daughter, Lindsay, tearfully remembered the moment she learned her father was gone. His best friend spoke about losing a partner and a brother. The pain was still raw, but the sentence brought some closure. Elizabeth showed little emotion, even as the sentence was read. She plans to appeal, but for Robert's loved ones, the message was clear. Justice may take time, but it never forgets. Our next case reveals a chilling mother who placed the blame for her ghastly crimes entirely on her son.
Yeah. That's good. Just watch your back.
It began with smoke rising from a quiet property in Cherokee County, Georgia. The fire wasn't from a bonfire or a grill. It came from something far more chilling. In 2018, a chilling discovery was made on the quiet property of Gary Wayne Ferris, a respected lawyer and devoted father. His remains were found beneath a burned pile of debris. Gary had lived there with his wife, Melody, but soon after the grim find, Melody was arrested. As detectives dug deeper into the case, they uncovered a trail of troubling signs, lies, inconsistencies in Melody's story, and a history of tension within the family. At first, the scene was a mystery. No one could believe it. A well-known family, shattered without warning. Detectives approached the case with precision, examining every detail. As the investigation unfolded, suspicion gradually turned toward Melody. They interviewed the couple's 3 children, Emily, Chris, and Scott. They searched the property, inspected the burn pile, and analyzed Melody's statements against the physical evidence. She was arrested and charged not only with Gary's killing, but also with attempting to cover it up. Despite the charges, Melody maintained her innocence. At sentencing, Melody finally broke her silence. She told the courtroom she had stayed quiet for over 6 years, following legal advice and trying to protect her family. But now, she said she couldn't hold it in any longer. Looking directly at her son, she admitted she could no longer protect him. She recalled seeing him near the fire that day. At first, he claimed he was just making sure it didn't spread, but later his story changed. Still, none of these claims changed the outcome. Nothing Melody said in court was enough to prove someone else was responsible. So what tore this family apart was a combination of long-standing issues in the marriage. Prosecutors highlighted a past affair and more recent arguments over money. It was a slow unraveling that ultimately ended in tragedy. And while the court reached a verdict, what truly happened in those final moments remains unclear. In court, she claimed her son, Scott, was behind it all. She described him as angry and unpredictable, and said he even failed a lie detector test. She said he framed her, but the court saw things differently. Tears came into Melody's eyes when the verdict was read, and she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She also received 2 additional 5-year sentences, one for hiding Gary's death, the other for making false statements.
We, the jury, as to count 4, find the defendant guilty.
The sentences would run concurrently, but the judge made it clear parole was unlikely. A once intact family was left in pieces. Her husband was gone. A mother stood accused by her children. 3 siblings were left with wounds that time alone can't heal. And the long, painful silence of a family that may never find peace. Our next case is even colder. A woman driven by revenge, leaving behind a trail of her own family's lives.
She came into my life telling me that she was there. She wasn't there to pull my family apart. She was there to give me the opportunity to clean up my life.
In the quiet stillness of a small Vermont town, no one could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. Not in the sky, but in the mind of one woman. Beneath the surface of Jody Herring's seemingly ordinary life, rage and despair had been building, slowly boiling over. Then, in a single day, that inner chaos spilled outward in the form of a merciless killing spree that would leave 4 people dead and an entire community reeling. Jody Herring, a mother who had recently lost custody of her 9-year-old daughter, had reached her breaking point. On August 7, 2015, just hours before a string of brutal killings, she left a voicemail that would later become a haunting piece of evidence. "You might want to stop. Calling DCF or I'm going to come there and shoot your brains out." She screamed into the answering machine of her relatives. Those words, once dismissed as a desperate outburst, turned into a terrifying prophecy. Herring's rage first turned inward, toward her blood. On the morning of August 7th, she went to the home of her relatives in Berlin, Vermont. Inside the house were Rhonda Herring, her cousin's mother, Regina Herring, her aunt, Julie Falzerano, her grandmother. What unfolded was a silent massacre. The 3 women were shot dead. There was no cry for help, no time to run. Police believe Herring executed the killings with methodical precision, cold, calculated, and personal. The bodies wouldn't be discovered until the next day, when Tiffany Herring Flint, daughter of one of the victims, came looking for her mother. Social worker Lara Sobel was gunned down. Later that same day, Herring took her fury to the state itself. Around 4:45 p.m., as Lara Sobel, a social worker with DCF, walked out of her office in downtown Barrie, Herring was waiting. Armed with a hunting rifle, she shot Sobel twice in the torso in front of horrified witnesses. Sobel collapsed near the building steps, and bystanders quickly restrained Herring until police arrived. Witness Carlin Sizemore testified that Herring was shouting, waving the rifle wildly, and yelling, "They didn't listen to me. It was my 9-year-old daughter. They got what they deserved." Jody Herring believed that the people closest to her had betrayed her. She was convinced that her relatives had been speaking to the Vermont Department for Children and Families, influencing the agency's decision to take away her daughter. For Herring, this wasn't just about custody. It was personal. It was war. In her eyes, those who helped DCF had destroyed her family, and now she would destroy theirs. During the sentencing hearing, defense attorney David Slay painted a dark picture of Herring's past. Growing up in a household of 16 children, Herring and her relatives were allegedly victims of ongoing physical, emotional, and psychological mistreatment. The trauma left deep psychological scars. Slay revealed that Herring's mental health had been rapidly deteriorating. She had recently been released early from a 90-day involuntary commitment at a psychiatric facility. If the system hadn't failed her again, he argued, she would have still been hospitalized the day the deaths occurred.
Count 1, which is the murder of Julie Palzarano, sentence will be 20 years to life to serve.
In July, Jody Herring pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for the death of Lara Sobel and 3 counts of second-degree murder for the deaths of her relatives.
I've been a mean person in my whole life, and Mr. Sobel is right. The loss of a child is so hard to endure. Felicia's right here. Desiree's up in the Chittenden County Correctional Center with me.
As the verdict was read, Jody broke down in court. The plea agreement recommends a sentence of 20 years to life for the second-degree murder charges. The decision of whether she will spend the rest of her life behind bars without the possibility of parole for Sobel's murder now rests with Superior Court Judge John Pacht. As the hearing continues, Vermont is left reeling from the horrific events. A child lost, 4 lives taken, and a justice system once again forced to reckon with the devastating cost of untreated trauma and unaddressed mental illness. Our next case is pure horror, where a $35 manicure led to a life being taken without a second thought.
I don't know the laws, and I don't care what it'll take. I will get you a lawyer. We will fix this. Just come home, call me, call Grandma. We could do this. We could do this together.
It was an ordinary day in Las Vegas when something unthinkable happened outside a small nail salon. What began as a routine manicure ended in a tragedy that would leave a family shattered and a city in shock. This is the case of Crystal Whipple and the tragic death of a hardworking mother, New Annie Knock Newen. Annie Newen was a loving mother, a dedicated worker, and a woman who gave everything to support her daughters. She managed Crystal Nails and Spa and often worked 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. On the day of the incident in December 2018, she was just doing her job, offering someone a $35 manicure. That customer was 23-year-old Crystal Whipple. After finishing her appointment, Whipple tried to pay using a credit card, but it was declined. She told Annie she would get cash from her car, but when she stepped outside, she jumped into a black Camaro and tried to flee. Annie and her boyfriend followed her out, hoping to stop her. As Whipple tried to escape, she hit Annie with the stolen car and dragged her about 50 feet across the parking lot. Annie was badly injured and died from her wounds. The police immediately began searching for Whipple, but she had already disappeared. Whipple used a fake ID and fled across state lines, from Las Vegas to Boulder City, then to Los Angeles, and finally to Arizona. She was on the run. She even planned to travel to North Carolina, but in January 2019, she was finally caught and arrested. At first, Whipple faced charges including robbery, stolen vehicle use, and burglary. But later, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. In court, she chose not to say anything during sentencing. But her silence couldn't undo the pain she'd caused. Her motive was simple: to avoid paying for a $35 manicure. That choice, to steal a service and run, led to a deadly outcome. A decision made in seconds took away a mother, a provider, and a beloved member of her community. District Judge Tiara Jones sentenced Whipple to 10 to 25 years in prison. As the judge announced these words, she simply gave a grief-stricken expression. The judge called the case absolutely horrifying. A woman lost her life simply trying to do her job. During the hearing, Annie's youngest daughter, Leigh, shared heartfelt words through a video feed. She said her mom was the epitome of selflessness. A refugee who raised her children alone, Annie always put her family first. Leigh added, "My achievements are her achievements. We all miss her very much." Annie's life was one of hard work and sacrifice. In the end, her dedication to her job led to a tragic and unfair end. This case reminds us that behind every face is a story, a family, and a future. And sometimes, the smallest acts of dishonesty can lead to the biggest disasters. These women made choices, some driven by anger, others by selfishness, but all led to irreversible consequences. The pain they caused was already done, and their courtroom responses, ranging from denial to desperation, reveal the chilling depths of their crimes.